You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. The Five Rings Podcast, 2016 Rio Summer Olympics edition on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And welcome to Thursday. It's Thursday, right?
I only know it's day 6. That's all I know.
Yeah, okay. It's beginning to blur a little bit. Kevin, I hope you're doing well. I'll talk to you later, but we got a guest on the line, so let's get him in right away. Beau Dure from he's a freelance journalist writing for the Bleacher Report and The Guardian right now for the games. He's covered previous games in the past for USA Today. How you doing, Beau?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Beau's American, so we thought we'd have an American voice on because we haven't had one on for a while, and we don't want to lose sight of our friends to the south. Let's just start with a general observation. How are the games being perceived in the U.S. right now? There's some NBC problems. We know the Rio lead up was a bit of an issue for people. Are the games exciting people yet?
Well, first I have to tell you that I was listening to Sarah McLachlan in preparation for this, so I do feel a little bit Canadian right now. I think the Olympics have a basic identity crisis right now. I think, especially in the U.S., because NBC is still broadcasting it to some extent using the 20th century frames. Everything is geared toward this primetime show, which has events that may or may not be live, and they may or may not tell you whether it's live. For example, last night, the beach volleyball game with Kerry Walsh-Jennings and April Ross, they actually lost a set. And then they had an injury delay, and one of the Swiss players was hurt. And so that ran over the men's 200 breaststroke final. And if your only source of information was NBC's primetime show, you wouldn't know that it had run long because they'd just pick up and join the breaststroke final as if it were happening right then. Well, if you're on Twitter, then you know who won the 200 breaststroke because it had already happened. And I still think NBC doesn't quite have faith that there are people who are hardcore fans of these sports. Now, of course, you can watch just about anything live on their live streams. It is mostly the international feeds that the Olympic-related broadcast service produces, and it's fun. It's just that's just like drinking from a fire hose. There's just too much to take in. The games are too big. They really are, and I'm befuddled that the IOC has added 5 more without kicking anything else out. It's just it's impossible to cover now. And so ratings are down for NBC primetime fare, but to some extent that's going to happen because there is choice. NBC has its almost every basketball and soccer game is live because they have specialty channels running for those. And they have a lot of other sports on a couple of their other cable networks. Bravo has been showing mostly tennis. I'm not sure what the tie-in is there. So there's so much choice that naturally some people are going to figure, I don't really need to watch the primetime show. So I think as a whole, there are a lot of Olympic fans here. It's just really difficult to please them all.
Yeah, and just one more question on the NBC front because it does sort of interest a lot of people. The ratings, as you say, are down. Do you think that might give them pause that finally it's going to turn so they understand that they need to address 21st century needs, second screen needs, third screen needs in some cases? Do you anticipate that there might be a change for Pyeongchang?
I think they just need to reframe it a bit. I mean, part of it is the people who report the ratings and say, oh, well, ratings are down, from this NBC block compared to the other. And then you read to about the 10th paragraph and they say, oh, but live streaming is up 177%. So believe me, I have not missed an Olympic ad. I think I can recite the ads for the films Pete's Dragon by heart. We have a really cute ad with the U.S.-Canadian power couple, Ashton Neaton and Brianne Thiessen-Neaton.
That's running up here too.
Yeah, and so I'm seeing Amy Schumer right now for about the 50th time in the last week. We're getting all the ads in, and that's really how the games pay for themselves. So I think it's going to take a change, not just on NBC's part, but just the media as a whole, to recognize that, look, we're all consuming the Olympics differently. There are some people probably consuming them illegally because for all the different options NBC has, they might prefer to watch the CBC or BBC or whatever. And so, I mean, I cannot condone that legally, but I'm sure some people are doing that, especially when they don't show the opening ceremony live, which and they didn't even live stream it online, which was just befuddling. And so, yeah, there's just so much choice now. And there's certainly people interested. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who looks at a menu of 30-some sports and says, "Nah, I don't want to watch any of that." But you'd also be hard pressed to find someone who says, "Yeah, I want to watch all of that," or could watch all that. There are already things I'm thinking, I can't wait till the Olympics are done, and then I want to go back and watch this thing that I missed. In fact, I'm actually looking forward to next year when we have world championships in things, and it's one sport at a time.
There you go.
So I can process it all.
Exactly. Well, especially swimming. If you're in Canada, they've been quite on fire in the pool. And next year is the World Championships, so it's going to be interesting in the swimming. But what is the story on sport, on actual, what performance has got your attention so far in the games? United States are first in the quote-unquote medal standings: 11 gold, 11 silver, 10 bronze as we speak. What did catch your attention so far?
One thing that surprised me a little bit is that I looked at the medal count this morning, and U.S. men right now have, I believe, 2 more medals than U.S. women, which that'll change by the end of the Olympics because have U.S. teams that are lined up for medals in soccer and field hockey and water polo and so forth, and volleyball is much more likely. So you'll have that will change over time. I think women's track and field will do well as also, but the that's one thing that stood out. But I think part of it is the unsurprising things. I mean, swimming and gymnastics. I mean, they have they've delivered. The people who came in with the most hype coming into these Olympics have more than lived up to it, and it's exciting. I mean, I worry when people are hyped because I hate to see someone hyped up. There's so many ignoramuses out there, so many, keyboard warriors and Twitter trolls and so forth who are just waiting for one of these people to fail. I mean, Simone Biles falling off a balance beam would be heaven to them because they can say, "Oh, she was all hype." Well, she's a 3-time world champion. She's not all hype. So I think it's been exciting to see people live up to it. And then the occasional surprise. I mean, the first gold medal of the games went to a teenager from my area, Northern Virginia, Jenny Thrasher, who just looks like a typical college kid, which she is, and just outshot the Chinese and won the first gold.
And Beau, one thing that caught my attention, the Ryan Lochte, Michael Phelps conundrum, because I call it that way because if Michael Phelps didn't exist, let's just put it that way, Ryan Lochte would be one of the best swimmers ever for the United States. And he's barely known now because of Michael Phelps. If you're Ryan Lochte, how do you try to make your mark in this world, especially in those games?
You say "yeah" a lot and show off your personality and dye your hair silver. And Ryan Lochte, I think, does okay for himself. He's had some, a lot of TV exposure, and in fact, somebody recently broadcast out his Tinder profile. So he's I don't worry so much about Lochte. There are other athletes. In fact, I'm going to mention later Ryan Murphy, a younger swimmer, has barely made a ripple. But it goes back again to the Olympics being so big. And one person who jumped out of my mind leading into the games, Christian Taylor. You guys probably know who he is. You guys probably know who he is, and most Americans don't. Mm-hmm. He's the best triple jumper in the world, and has proven it time and time again, and has put in incredible performances. The only guy who's jumped farther than him was knighted, Jonathan Edwards in Britain. And if Christian Taylor were English, the BBC wouldn't shut up about him. But he's American, and so he's just overshadowed by every other athlete out there. I mean, the triple jump, oddly enough, it's going to be one of the morning finals. You may have noticed down the schedule they will have some morning events. So I don't know if that means he might get a little bit more attention just because it won't be competing with the bluster of everything else that's going on in prime time. But who knows? There's simply so much in the Olympics, and you could devote 20 cable channels to it and broadcast everything live, and no one person can process it all.
I'm trying my best, but yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
me too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. It's one more on Phelps. I think people do tend to get some Phelps fatigue sometimes because we hear a lot about him, not just in the United States, all over the world. Of course, we should, because he is one of the greatest Olympians ever. So that is my question. In terms of American Olympians all time, I know the medal count's there, but you have to sort of factor that in with the amount of medals available to them. Where do you think he ranks in terms of great American Olympians all time?
I'm not sure you can find anyone better. I mean, even let's say the only medals awarded were for most medals won in the pool in a given Olympiad. I mean, he would have crushed that in a couple of Olympics already. I mean, this is I guess his fifth Olympics, but the fourth one in which he is really racking up the medals, and so he has been dominant in multiple events in 4 consecutive Olympics. And so I've seen some arguments among the various Olympic historians suggesting, oh, well, what about this guy who won the discus 4 straight times? Okay. Well, yeah, but then you could argue that Phelps won swimming, the whole thing, 4 times. And there are a lot more swimmers in the world than there are discus throwers. Mm. So I think Phelps, you have to rank number 1.
Now we're day 6, Beau, today. We're getting to the close of the first week. We're going to start track and field next week. It's getting ready now. We've seen images of athletes training in the Olympic Stadium. What is the event that you're really looking forward, with an American perspective, for track and field next week?
Well, we have to watch the men's 100 meters and see if Gatlin can finally beat Bolt. He's done it once before, but it wasn't in an Olympic or World Championship competition. And he keeps posting faster times, and then Bolt edges him out. And that happened especially last year. Gatlin had all the fastest times of the year. Bolt edged him out in the World Championship. And so this year, Gatlin again has faster times, and Bolt had the injury that made him withdraw from the Jamaican trials, though he's looked very good since then. And so you wonder, is this going to be the time that it finally happens? And that's just it's always a marquee event at the Games. I think this year it is, it's just fast. I mean, it's almost a Lockie Phelps situation in a sense, even though they're from different countries, where, I mean, what would Gatlin's career look like right now if he hadn't been chasing Usain Bolt all these years?
But I want to talk about the American. We'll have you on another time maybe to talk about women's soccer. I'm going to leave that aside for today because we talk about that all the time, and we've done that to death in this show. But I do want to talk about the female gymnasts in the United States, and I'd like you to sort of let people know from outside the U.S. what kind of pressure those young women must be feeling, and how much attention they get in an Olympic Games like that on the NBC coverage in the United States. What is the scale of that?
Well, here's the funny thing. Gymnastics is not being broadcast live in the U.S. You can watch the live streams where you have options of the general feed, which has commentary. I believe it's the international broadcast commentary team, but it just so happens that they're Americans, former Olympic gymnasts Jonathan Horton and Courtney Kupets. And they it's fun to watch if you're watching the live stream, but then you're going to miss something because they're at the mercy of whoever's producing it to hop around. And at one point yesterday, the producers of that feed decided they would rather that phone will shut off in a second. They decided that they would rather focus on someone who was just sitting off to the side rather than the actual gymnastics in progress. So then you can opt instead to watch for the any of the 4 apparati in operation at a time, and then you watch it without commentary and without any sense of what's going on around the rest of it. So they save it for prime time, and in a way, that's not such a bad thing. I think, watching gymnastics live, and I've been live blogging it for The Guardian and will again today. It's frustrating because there's so many lulls, and it seems like this time around, particular commentators have picked up on it, that you can go several minutes waiting for a score to be announced, and that's frustrating. And so NBC, I think, does well to edit it down and show it in prime time. Now, I've been hearing from people who have only seen it in prime time that they still question some of the editing decisions that NBC is making. But they deserve that primetime showcase. I mean, even in this modern new media world, there are going to be more people watching television at 8 o'clock than there are at 3 o'clock, and so it's certainly good that you get to see Biles and Raceman and Douglas, with a little bit of drama built in. I think it's a little bit unreasonable to think that people are not going to have the event spoiled, that you're going to get through the day without hearing that the U.S. team did in fact win. But I think it's good, and the performances have been exceptional, because gymnastics is one of those sports where, I mean, if you're a swimmer who's hyped, well, the pressure is on you to swim fast. And yeah, you can make a mistake, you can go out too fast, something can go wrong. But the pressure of that is a little bit different than the pressure of, okay, I have to do this flip and land on a 4-inch beam. Mm-hmm. Things can go catastrophically wrong in no time in gymnastics. And through qualifying, through the team event, nothing has for the U.S. And that's, I think, the most remarkable thing. They're attempting the most difficult routines in the world and basically nailing every one of them.
Yeah, different level, but up here, the Canadian team, where they were hoping to make the final 8, missed by basically 1 centimeter when the final gymnast in the final routine on the uneven bars slipped off. A fingernail difference, right? And that's how precise that sport is. But before we let you go, we always ask our guests to sort of give their gold, silver, bronze, wood medals for the Olympics so far. I think you understand the concept of those. So yep. Wondering if maybe you could start with your wood and work up to the positive.
All right, the wood for me is the piling up. I would say perhaps even the witch hunt against Yulia Efimova, the Russian swimmer. I wrote about that on my site at duresport.com, and it's a symptom of so many problems. One is that, again, the Olympics are so big that the mainstream media can't go into detail or anything or explore the nuances. So it just becomes rather simplistic outrage. And because that's what people understand, it's been heartening to see that a few columnists, Alan Abramson, AP's John Lester, and Washington Post Sally Jenkins, have actually questioned it and said, look, this situation is more complicated than you think. It's not like Efimova is the product of an East German style, steroid operation. She lives in the United States, trains in the United States, is tested by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, which is one of the strongest in the world. And, it's just how the U.S. has been looking at it. And it also shows that we still look at through jingoistic frames. We're still, it's still heroes and villains, West and East. And just as NBC is still packaging the Olympics as if it's 1996, we're still writing about the Olympics as if it's 1980. So the bronze medal, aside, it's actually tough to find male athletes who are getting a lot of attention other than Michael Phelps, oddly. And so I picked out Ryan Murphy. He's barely 21 years old. And the funny thing is, thanks to him, the USA has not lost the gold medal in the 100-meter backstroke in his lifetime. They've won it all the years, all the Olympics of his life coming up to here, and then he pulled it off again here, and he did it with an Olympic record. He's got a chance at 2 more medals, 200-meter backstroke, and then also the medley relay. And this is somebody who's just getting started. He may hit his peak in 2020.
Fair enough.
You'll appreciate the silver medal for me is Canadian women's soccer. Because the format is terrible, and I heard you guys talk about this yesterday. It's not fair with only 12 teams and with the geographic representation. It means we don't have Japan, which seems absurd to me. And then it's not fair to the teams in that oddball group in which the first place team plays another group's runner-up, and the second place team plays another group's runner-up. And so you have the situation of Canada and Germany. And I was pleased that Canada stood up for the integrity of the game, basically, and played honestly and won. And I think that's fantastic. And I think Canada's at a terrific spot right now because they have two generations excelling. They have the Sinclair Matheson generation along with the Jesse Fleming and Janine Becky generation. It's going to be interesting, by the way, to see Jesse Fleming and Mallory Pugh playing together in college.
Absolutely.
Assuming Mallory Pugh ends up going to UCLA at some point. She's not going to go in the fall because of the U20 World Cup. And Canada's pulled in more young players. I'm a Duke grad, and it was pleasing for me to see Rebecca Quinn called into action with the Zadorsky red card and go in and play well at center back because she's current student at Duke. So if there's any karma in soccer, then Canada will beat France just because Canada's playing so well and they played so honestly against Germany. And also France just simply threw it away against the United States. I mean, Hotello made a couple of good saves, but they also made Solo look good, and they missed some chances that Solo would not have had a chance of saving. Just they were just wide open and they didn't get to it. So gold, and we talked about this a little bit already. I have to give it to Simone Biles because every 4 years we all sort of become gymnastics experts, don't we? I mean, and we have no idea. I mean, you have to have commentators there telling you, what they're doing, why it's so difficult. But the fact that she's taking on such difficult routines and just nailing them, and to do that again with the pressure, I mean, one slip and things can change so dramatically. Now, granted, she will have such an advantage in the points that she could miss something and still lose, but so far she has not missed anything, and no one on the U.S. team has. But she is amazing to watch, to the point where if you can learn the result, go ahead and find out who wins the all-around this afternoon, but you've got to tune in and see her, just because what she does is so astounding. The hang time she gets on her routines on the floor and the vault are just astounding. And the spin move, I'm sure there's a great technical name for it, but it's something I don't see other people do. When she starts her beam routine and then just spins like she's Michael Jackson or something like that, except that she's in a crouch like a Russian folk dancer. I can't fathom how anybody does that, and she makes it look easy. So
fair enough, Beau. All right, we'll say goodbye today because I know you're busy, and hopefully maybe we can touch base before the end of the games again, and we always appreciate your insight.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Dave's in great position on this. At this point, he's in perfect position on the outside. Good striking distance to this last 100, 200 meters.
Stand by for the kick of Dave Waddle. If he's got it, he could make it. But he's got to catch Orshanov and the Kenyans. And here he comes. This is the bid for a gold medal of Dave Waddle. He's got one Kenyan.
I think he's going to get it.
Make it. I think he did it. Dave Waddle won the gold medal. The man who came out of nowhere in the U.S. Olympic trials.
A little flashback to Munich, Duane, for all our listeners today.
That's going back a few years. You know, some of a classic Olympic moment there, of course. Thanks again to Beau for taking some time. Let's jump right into our medals for the day. Captain, we had a little technical issue off the start, so we're a little tighter right now, but let's get right going right now, and I'll start with mine. The wood medal of the day. I'm going to be a little bit gentle in my wood medal today, and it's going to simply be rain. I was all geared up yesterday to watch especially Nestor Pospisil play for a silver medal, basically, and then for the potential to win a gold and to clinch a medal in the men's doubles in the tennis side, because that is one of the stories that I'm most interested in this game from a Canadian perspective. Daniel Nestor is an athlete in this country that deserves more recognition than he gets. We've talked about him a lot. I think we give him plenty of it, but nonetheless, getting a medal in the Olympics would be a great way for him to end his career, and I was all geared up to have that maybe happen and be assured of yesterday, and the rain denied me of that. So hopefully it'll happen today. It is winter down there, so you never know in the weather, but they got to squeeze her in. So that is my wood medal. Is just the rain. The rain, Kevin.
I'll take the winter that Rio has any day.
Yeah.
Compared to what we're used to. My wood medal, the small part of my wood is the crowds themselves, Dwayne. After a few days, we noticed some events are getting a lot of attention, a lot of crowds. But have you watched field hockey? Poor players. There's like 4 guys in the stands. And it's a shame because it's their biggest event in 4 years, the only time that we talk about them. And there's nobody watching live there in person. And my other part of my wood, Dwayne, is the cynicism and the attitude of, oh, we only care every 4 years anyway, so why do you care so much? You know what? We do care so much, and we do care between those 4 years. That's why this show exists. That's why we talk about it. And nowadays, there are more people than you can think that actually care during those 4 years, and not just every 4 years, that do find ways to watch what they want to watch. Because now World Cups, World Championship meets are available to watch, even on specialty channels on your regular TV. So you know what? That cynicism and attitude, I hope that it's eventually going to go away, because I do care outside of those 4 years. And I know that you do too.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not 1986 anymore, folks, or 96 even, where you only get exposed to these sports maybe in a package format on the weekend sports show, like a Wide World of Sports back in the day, or CBC Sports Saturday here in Canada. You can get these anytime you want, and both through legal and illegal means. And I mean, I don't have much guilt in watching handball on my computer at 2 in the afternoon when it's not regular available to me here anyway, or something like that. So yeah, absolutely. And I'm just tired of people telling me what matters, like having their view of sports be the definition of what has to be absolute. I spoke to that yesterday with my wood medal. It's like, well, okay, fine. I'm not asking you to care. If you don't care, if you don't want to be excited by a bronze medal, that's your prerogative. But why are you judging me for it? Like, it's my prerogative to be excited for it. So that's kind of there.
And you know what? If program directors across the board, if there was one of them that actually had the intestinal fortitude, let's put it this way, and to put the pants and tight your pants up correctly, and actually decide to program a little bit of Olympic sports every week, or a magazine show or something, to bring back that aspect of keeping people in the loop. And if you keep people in the loop and I don't like to say the word teach them, but if you show them the sport and you expose the sport more, or sports, or whatever that entails, you can create excitement for those sports outside of the Olympics as well. The possibilities are there. Hopefully somebody puts their pants eventually.
Yeah, CBC Sports Saturday is probably the single most influential thing to my love of these sports. Obviously, I watched the Olympics as a kid, but in between the Olympics, every Saturday at 3:00, I can remember it distinctly, I would stop whatever I was doing. I would go in. I didn't watch Saturday morning cartoons as a kid. What I did is watch sports like that and love them so much. The crazy Canucks of skiing.
It explains a lot.
Yeah, there you go. The crazy Canucks of skiing, and I realize now it's tape delay, but back then we didn't know. And they just show it as if it was live. And I understand the time zones and all that make that a little more complicated, but nonetheless, you could do stuff like that still. And they do it to a lesser extent. It's not quite like it was in the glory days, but certainly that. In terms of the attendance, real quickly, Kevin, I think, that's the catch-22 of hosting an Olympics in a place that doesn't have massive wealth, right? I mean, there is wealth in Brazil, but I mean that. I mean, the uniform, middle class, upper middle class people that can buy those tickets and fill them out. Olympic tickets aren't cheap. So I think you're seeing a bit of that there. Certainly those that bash the attendance of the Pan Ams look like idiots right now, though. And that makes
Pan Ams had a lot of more people than the Olympics, to be quite honest.
The second week of the Pan Ams, it was nearly impossible to get into the big venues. So at any rate, all right, so let's move on to the bronze medal. And I'm not bashing them, but slightly critical of them. And we're going to explore this a lot more tomorrow morning, the rowers, that is. But they had some decent performances, in particular this morning, the women's eights crew. They went through to the finals pretty dominant in their repechage, where they won that by about 3/4 of a boat. That was the best performance, the first performance of the Olympic Games to me that looked like the Canada of old in the rowing competition. It is Canada's second most successful event all time in the Summer Games. So to see them struggling this much in the water is a bit startling at times, and that's why we're going to explore it a bit more tomorrow. But certainly today was a little bit better, and I want to give them props for that. Particularly the women's eights were able to push through the negativity that's happening so far in the regatta, because that can make things worse. If your other boats are struggling, then you're going to get in your head too. and get the result they needed today. Kevin, yours?
Exactly. My bronze medal for today is the golf course of the Rio Olympic. Today I've been transfixed, but I know that you have been as well. The golf course itself is amazing. It looks great. It's a great color, a great grass. Like the shape of it, it's amazing because it's the first time people play on it. It's not a golf course that you can just go and play. No, it's the Olympic golf course. It's right now the most exclusive golf course on the planet. And the layout, the way it's designed, it's beautiful, it's stunning, the backdrop, but competitively, it's hard. Golfers have been trying, and yes, a Canadian's in contention during day one. So Graham Dillette, which is one of the top pros that actually decided to go. A lot of them decided not to go. But so far, just the look of this tournament is going to be very impressive to me. The competitive side of it's going to be tight. It's going to be not minus 20s after one day. It's going to be a tough challenge for the players, and it really makes for maybe not exciting live 5 hours watching of TV, but condense that in 20 minutes, and heck, you're going to have quite a highlight package.
Yeah, it's something closer to a links course than it would be to a typical stadium course you'd see in the PGA right now. It has a lot more, like Graham Dillette, for instance. You mentioned him. He putted from out, like from 30 feet off
from the fairway.
Today, this morning. And that's something you'd see in a links course more than you would, like I said, in a stadium course. So it
was
makes
very windy today as well. So the idea is not to get the ball too high today because it was very windy. Especially, hopefully, you mentioned the weather in your wood. Hopefully, the weather does get better tomorrow because it still seemed to be muggy and a bit rainy today.
Yeah, well, that's the nature of the beast there. All right, good one, that. All right, let's move on, and I'll give you my silver medal right now. My silver medal is going to be the Korean archers team. Is it arching? I don't know. Or the archery team. That's what I'm trying to say, Kevin. I was watching a lot of archery yesterday, and I think that sort of speaks to my desire to watch the entire Olympics. When I say I'm watching the Olympics, I mean I'm watching the whole Olympics. At any rate,
you're watching everything.
Yeah, I know, and I don't think people get that when I say that. I love the Olympics. I watch a lot of it. They go, oh yeah, I get it, and then 2 days in, they're like, are you going to watch something else? I'm like, no, I told you I was watching the Olympics. Anyway.
Is it over? Did you hear the ceremony? No, then I'm watching the Olympics.
Yeah, it's what I do 24 hours a day for those 2 weeks, once every 2 years. Well, not quite 24 hours because they don't run as much. And the winter's a nice little break for me because you can watch the entire winter games. The summer games, it's, as Beau said, it's like, whoa.
But this year, there's no Olympic nighttime that used to put until like all the way through the night. They would re-show the days. I missed that because I'm a night owl. Usually I really got a lot with this, and there's not that on TV this year.
Yeah. I kind of like, sorry, I'll get back on my silver in a minute, but I kind of miss them ending, like Sochi, for instance. Most of the stuff ended around, if my memory serves, like the hockey games might have went to 5 or 6. Like you had, like that was the end of the broadcast day, and that meant the prime time was still open. So it made the people in my life a little less insane, like in terms of them reacting to me, because I tell them
they could watch their shows. They could watch their TV show. Now they can't.
Like I'm sorry, it's just going to be on all day. That's just the nature of the beast. You might as well make yourself nocturnal and watch stuff overnight, because that's what I'm not watching anyway.
Exactly. Or get your own damn TV.
Yeah, exactly. The Korean archers, they're just so dominant when you watch it. And I was reading last night, or yesterday, I should say. I was reading a little bit. There was a Reddit thread, actually, that explains sort of some of the nature of how Korea became so dominant in archery. They have a traditional form of archery that everyone learns in school over there. And most archers in Korea apparently are still do this traditional archery that they do. However, the very best are able to are sponsored by companies there and become professionals and are full-time professional archers, and they're focused totally on getting these medals. So you can't even comprehend, like I can't even comprehend the amount of pressure they must have. Like they're getting paid by some company in Korea to be a professional archer, to go to these competitions and do nothing. Like gold is what is expected, right? Maybe silver if your compatriot won gold, that might be okay. So that amount of pressure for them to do such a precision sport with that amount of pressure, it's incredible. And that's the type of athleticism, the precision, and that ability to block everything out and do something so precise, as I said, doesn't get as appreciated as speed and power does sometimes. So I just wanted to give them some props, because if you do get a chance this afternoon to watch the archery final, which the individuals will be decided today, give it a couple minutes on your stream if you have nothing else going on, because it is interesting to watch, and the Koreans are so dominant in it. All right, Kevin, go on.
Yep, all my medals, you'll notice after I say my silver, my gold, they're not athletes, they're not performance, because we're getting to a point where there's so much that it's hard for me to pinpoint one in the last 24 hours. categories. So my silver, bear with me for a second, Dwayne. If you are aware of this, the genesis of the show, the first theme music of this show, all that was track and field, the video game back in the day. So you all are aware that I like me some sports video games, especially Olympics video games. And it would have been easy for me to put this in the wood category and say, oh, there's no real video games like in Sochi. There's no real video games for Rio and for PS4s or Xbox One, the new generation consoles. And I could have belabored this for hours. But instead, I'm going to thank Sega for 2012 London on Xbox and PS3 because this is giving me my fix still. It's still well made, it's still fun to play, and the online capabilities are still working, so I can get my fix of actually imagine that I can actually row a kayak and be in the course. It's not the same course as Rio, but it'll do for now.
Fair enough. And I suspect with 2020 in Tokyo, you might
to make one. Come on.
You might get an update on that. Pyeongchang too, as well. We might get a winter update. The winter games, it's funny though. I suspect that the winter games are a little easier to replicate in a video game form because of what they are, like the skiing and that. It's probably a little easier. I don't know. Because I don't have a new gen system here. All my systems are like old and like with walkers. So
with cartridges.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have any. I should go find one. Actually, I might do that.
But London 2012. To be quite honest, yesterday I actually got a world record, so I am the proud owner, probably inspired by Penny Oleksiak. I have the 50-meter actual world record of everybody that played online ever. I am the fastest in the women's breaststrokes with Penny Oleksiak.
There you go.
Because I named my character Penny Oleksiak yesterday. You damn right.
All right, Penny will appreciate it. Good Toronto girl, that. So then anyway, let's move on to my gold. And we already sort of talked about it a bit, but I wanted to give my gold medal to Graham Dillette today because of his, not just his start in the Olympic golf tournament. Certainly that is impressive. He was -5 at the time we started to record this. Well, he's done. He's off the course. He was in the silver medal position at -5 through the first 18 holes of this tournament. So he should be, unless he blows up tomorrow, in contention for the final 2 rounds. And that's a great thing for Canadian golf and for the interest here, because I guarantee you that if Graham Dillette is in contention on the final day, no one in Canada is going to care who's not there at any rate. But I want to give him credit for a couple things. First off, there's a neat little story on his caddy side. His regular caddy is just got married and his wife wants to have a family, so they were a little concerned about the Zika virus, and what I know, that's a legitimate concern because it stays in the male system a little bit longer and it can affect the pregnancy even if it's 1 in a million. I get that concern.
And a golfer will be out 4.5 hours on a golf course close to water puddles and places where mosquitoes actually are born and bred, so the risk factor for a golfer and his caddy might be higher than the other athletes.
All right, so I will let that go, especially the caddy side of things. So rather than make that a decision for him to pull out as well, he went and he brought a former NHL hockey player, Ray Whitney, as his caddy. And if you know Dillette, he's a massive hockey fan. So that makes sense, and they both live in Phoenix now. So that was a fun little story there too. But I just also like that he tweeted 2 days ago. Obviously, he'd arrived for the practice round. He went, "It's really sad that there's been so much bashing of the Olympics and the golf tournament in Central because everything here has been first rate so far." So I just think the nice Canadian reach out to say that I want to thank the people here in Rio for treating me well. He's clearly taking the tournament seriously. There's been so much negativity around the golf, and as we said, I was watching. I was transfixed by it this morning because it's fun. And the leader, I should actually mention as well, I'll give him a hat tip here, is Marcus Fraser, who's a guy that doesn't compete on the PGA Tour. He's in the Aussie and the Asian Tour. And so the guy like that to come on and have his moment to glory, I don't care who's out there, Roy McIlroy, whatever. If you want to watch track and field, you enjoy that because these guys are out there competing, representing their country, and doing it with respect to the movement. And in the end of the day, they might get the Olympic gold medal, and you can still be your arrogant self, and that's fine.
Exactly, Duane. My gold medal goes to John Atkinson and Swimming Canada, the high performance director for Swimming Canada. Duane, I have been more than impressed with the resurgence of Canada in the pool. You mentioned U of T. There's a lot of connections there, especially with Byron McDonald. He does the feed for CBC, the commentating in English with Elliot Friedman. But when you have the resurgence of a program like this with young athletes making their way, swimming their way into a team, and then just putting their head down and swimming. They were brought up the right way. They were shown how to compete the right way. Everything surrounding what I call meet day operation, how they get ready, they train, everything that helps an athlete get that performance, get that personal best. This is first class for Swimming Canada as we speak, and it helps every athlete get their result. So I am very impressed by Swimming Canada as a whole for the amount of great managing of athletes' day performance.
All right, that's a good one, and the swim meet's not quite over yet. There could be a few more medals there. Hopefully, the men can get on the board as well.
Penny swims tonight, Duane, and she might even win her gold tonight.
And I would think that the men's freestylers, both of them would have a chance in the 50 as well. And Penny, she swam, the second fastest time in Olympic history last night.
The fifth time ever. The fifth fastest time ever swam in that distance.
Yeah, and she's 3 medals already and a chance to win a 4th, which would put her in pretty exclusive territory for a Canadian.
We didn't even mention it. I don't know if you call it fatigue. Swimming Canada fatigue. Another medal last night, 4x200 meter relay. And the interesting factor here for Team Canada, they subbed 2 swimmers in the morning to qualify for the final. And in the final, they subbed in Overholt, I think, and Penny Oleksiak. Penny swam the anchor relay once again. She brought it home with a medal again.
Yeah, and it would be nice. Obviously nice to win a gold. I think that it would also really help the program for one of these people. I'm not saying it won't be a failure by any means. It'll be a successful meet regardless of whether they manage to get to the top of the podium. But if they were to get to the top of the podium, that would be other level. And that would be certainly nice. And, we are, 6 days in, so we can start to fret about the lack of gold, I guess, soon. But nonetheless, the gold, silver, and bronze, as I said off the top, they're worthwhile things to celebrate as well. All right, Kevin, we should wrap it up now because we have soccer today, which is going off in about 9 or 10 minutes. So let's you say goodbye, and we'll be back very soon with our soccer portion of today's broadcast.
And until tomorrow for 5 Rings Daily, enjoy your Olympics, folks. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.